Man, I sure love video games, especially the Blizzard kind. It would be a shame if something awful happened.
Users, harassment, discrimination, you name it.
Activision Blizzard. It has suspended a gamer and taken his prize money away because he made comments supporting Hong Kong protesters.
Last week, the state of California sued Activision Blizzard.
Activision Blizzard makes some of the world's top video games like Overwatch, World of Warcraft, and Call of Duty. Now some employees are complaining of mistreatment and calling for changes. In September, the company settled a discrimination and harassment lawsuit from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for $18 million.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Blizzard Entertainment is a cultural monolith of the gaming industry. I mean, Blizzard Activision has all of the big names. Call of Duty, Candy Crush, World of Warcraft. These are some of the biggest games ever. The company has its hands in colleges across America. They fund esports. It's involved with movies and moral panics. Defining Blizzard as just a games company is wrong, because the emotional backbone of Blizzard is people's childhoods. It's associated with the man-child years. But any goodwill that they've seemed to, garner, they've pretty much destroyed. And in order to understand this, we need to start the story in the middle with the straw that broke the camel's back. The Cosby Room. Oh boy, this is a hotel room at BlizzCon. It's a convention for Blizzard games where top developers at the company would meet and do informal networking and strike deals. The room was an open secret. To get into it was a place that you wanted to be. These were the cool guys climbing the company ladder. I should mention that the room carries that aura with it. The room actually does predate the Cosby events. According to reports that did get it wrong, it does carry the legacy of the disgraced actor, but nobody was actually taken advantage of here, which is a misnomer about this whole situation. The lawsuit that the Cosby Suite was involved in used it as a point of sexual discrimination in the workplace. We'll get all back to this room and place and people in a moment, but it's images like this, with these dudes cuddling together on the bed, that would be the striking rod for the fire of protest at Blizzard Entertainment. This video is going to be a bit spicy because, of what I'm covering. So, by the way, make sure to support me on Patreon if you can. I don't like mincing words, but I do have to mince words and be careful with my verbiage when we talk about these misconducts and misdeeds. I think this shouldn't come as a controversial statement, but China has been growing as an economic superpower with vast, untapped wealth in the tech sector and entertainment, as Chinese citizens look to indulge in media. For example, Tencent partially owns Blizzard Entertainment. They're a huge name in Chinese gaming. There's a caveat with all this though. The Politburo of China wants to make sure they have a say in this. I don't think people realize how insane this can get. Xi Jinping is trying to pull his own cultural revolution here, instilling values to help build social cohesion amongst his people. Wealthy Chinese investors invest in Western businesses and start to pull over these businesses into the Chinese market. All this means that the Politburo more specifically gets to say what is and isn't okay to show up in the Chinese markets. For example, Fight Club was changed recently, and it was changed after backlash, but it's a huge example of movies or objects that disrupt that social harmony. There's also rules about mystical, faith-related things, but basically speaking, if you want to play ball in Chinese sectors, you need to play ball with the Politburo and get along with what they say is okay. And Blizzard wants that money. They will say whatever they need to. Meanwhile, while Blizzard is trying to break into China, one of the largest modern protests for democracy is turning into an urban war in Hong Kong. Hong Kongers young and old took to the streets over an extradition law and moreover demanded autonomous democratic processes that Hong Kong had had under the British since modern times, and they took a hands-off approach. This meant by and large, Hong Kongers were much more westernized than their peers and had values that were different from the mainland China. So the CCP brought in a militarized police force, hired and dressed up professional gangsters, and made people kill themselves by throwing themselves off balconies, and always the, classic story of he shot himself in the head twice from behind. Socially, people really didn't pay attention to these protests. It was a thing, but it also wasn't really. Sparingly people paid attention to it, but a Hearthstone player would galvanize gamers the world over who are currently enjoying WoW Classic. This was Blitzchung, playing at the highest level of pro Hearthstone at the Hearthstone Grandmasters Tournament, where he said, quote, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our times." Blizzard, of course, had suspiciously different values from Blitzchung, so he got suspended for a year and had to forfeit his prize money. And the sportscasters from that event were actually fired. Blizzard had been developing a case of the declining user base because they kept putting out just normal company garbage, but it turned into a small social movement now. Blizzard, with a large, non-mainland Chinese audience, sided with Blitzchung, and people unsubbed from WoW en masse, including myself, citing this exact reason. People made names mocking the CCP and the game and were banned as a result. And so they did it more, and it just got worse and worse till people were just clowning on Blizzard in World of Warcraft. Now, Winnie the Pooh memes became super mainstream as a result, and Zoomers the world over were dunking on Xi Jinping and social credit systems. This was all very hilarious because Blizzard's core values seemed to align more with the Western values rather than the CCP's values, and they looked really stupid. Now, for what it's worth, Blizzard did reduce the ban. They capitulated and gave him his money, but it was all done to placate to the developers who had actually staged a walkout, and to the gamers who protested outside conventions saying how this was wrong, and standing outside the Blizzard offices also doing the same exact thing. Blitzchung retired in 2021, closing his story. Blizzard never personally apologized to him, and in 2020 he did an interview, and this was just a really powerful moment, so I'm going to include it here, but you can watch the full video linked down below.
Probably a big question, but why are people protesting?
Why are people protesting? For freedom. For freedom, like the things we had, the things we enjoyed in the past. Like we had the freedom of speech, freedom of demonstrating, but now everything has been changing. We're just trying to defend our rights, right?
Like I'm trying to be careful with the questions that we're asking, but do you worry about even in an interview like this talking about that kind of thing?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I just can't really understand. Yeah, this is not a normal thing.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't have to be worried about with things like that.
Hong Kong was kind of one of those moments that showed a lack of morals in the company, but they still had some goodwill to spend on people. But what came next was kind of the final straw for pretty much everybody, including government officials. When the state of California filed a suit against the company, the other shoe basically dropped. And California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing alleged that, quote, the company fostered a, quote, frat boy culture in which female employees were subjected to sexual harassment, unequal pay, and much more, end quote. This is where that Cosby Suite comes from, which according to reports is a joke about ugly sweaters in the room looking old, but it depends what room they're talking about, and a bunch of other things. Reporting on this has been really mixed, and people have focused more on the fact that it is related to Cosby rather than the origins of how this room came to be. I mean, it seems kind of routine for games journalists, but reporting this incorrectly, but yeah, they did allege that this was related to the Cosby events, and so far I haven't been able to find anything that supports that claim. The suite existed before 2013 based on my findings, but the screenshots included are from 2013, which predate the Cosby allegations by about a year. And by that I mean it was going to be a really good timing for all of this if it is the case against Blizzard, or good bad timing, right? In 2014, you see Hannibal Buress and a court case in 2018 would pretty much change public Cosby perception. The stuff had happened prior to that, but the social outcry was really minimal, and people didn't have a different view of Cosby until after that, at least generally speaking. I know some people might be super well read, but generally most people aren't. Really, in reality, what the Cosby Suite was used as is an emotional point in what the state of California is saying in their court case. It has more to do with just how the company operated. And also, they misspelled Cosby's last name and called him Crosby in the court documents. I just felt like that was worth a mention because it was driving me nuts. How do you mess that up? You got 29 pages and all the time in the world to write it. You're the prosecution. Whatever. So who owned this Cosby Suite at BlizzCon? Well, that would be Alex Afransabi. This guy owned the room and was the leading man for these frat bro shenanigans at BlizzCon, with discussions about bringing quote-unquote hot chicks back to the room. Alex made a joke in 2013 about how he'd marry all the women they brought back because he was Middle Eastern, to which Jesse McCree says he should actually just screw them all. According to the court documents, J. Allen Breck, the president of the company, Blizzard, verbally counseled Afransabi on his behavior. A slap on the wrist is apparently the resulting disciplinary action he received. What that really means, it really means that J. Allen Breck looked the other way when Afransabi was acting this way in the office and at BlizzCon. Now, according to the court documents, working at Blizzard was basically akin to working in a frat house where sexual harassment was commonplace. Employees would do a thing called a cube crawl, where they drink in the office, and allegedly male employees came into work hungover. Apparently, according to the court document, it alleges that this was considered a proud feat. This is also really out of pocket, but there was another line in here that was relating Blizzard being a frat house by saying, quote, "Similarly, male employees would play video games during work." Which, I mean, I guess they mean that they're playing games instead of working, but you also work at a game studio. So you have to play games at some point, right? Now, the document follows that up by mentioning how male employees would joke about their sexual encounters, talk openly about female bodies, and make numerous jokes about SA. I just find it so strange that the other part was mentioned in the same paragraph about them playing video games. It just is very strange. But again, we gotta realize that these documents that were leaked, well, not leaked, but released, were from the state of California. And really, they're building their case here. This isn't the court procedure, this is the prosecution making their argument before going to court. You see, allegedly random male employees would approach one female employee and comment on her breast. Female employees were subject to male supervisors hitting on them, making derogatory comments about SA, and engaging in demeaning behavior. A supervisor told a male subordinate to solve his bad mood by buying a prostitute. A female employee had some kind of sexual relationship with a male supervisor as well. She was also being harassed and committed unalive. I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about it like that, but I have to, or I don't get to make money doing this. I don't make much doing this. Please support the channel. I hate begging, but please. Anyway, as much as I want to get annoyed, let's move on. Apparently, this employee had been spending time with the supervisor on business trips. After they had a police investigation, they contacted the male supervisor, and they found that he had a butt plug and lubricant for this trip, which I don't know. It was just a thing that the court document mentioned. Allegedly, she had been harassed prior to this, and male coworkers after her death passed around pictures of her genitals, or before. The court document says one thing, but articles report the exact opposite thing. See, this is the problem with sourcing articles and not reading the document. I'm going with what the document says. They passed around photos of her after her death. We'll go with that. Another allegation is that women who were not huge gamers at the company were actually excluded from company functions and mocked as being outsiders or people that just couldn't get along, and they would be basically kept on the outsides from everything. Men also groped women. HR didn't do anything about this, and most often the information that was supposed to be kept confidential with HR was not kept confidential, and in fact told to either supervisors or the or the men who had did the thing, at least allegedly. Women were paid less for the same position as well, lost benefits. The document alludes to outspoken employees also getting blacklisted. When the company would downsize, they would allegedly look around at who spoke out against the status quo and drop them specifically. Ah, good old Bobby boy. Anyway, Bobby Kotick, he's the Activision CEO and allegedly knew about all this and more from his years at Blizzard and Activision Studios, including the alleged SA allegation. This caused the SEC to get involved, that's the Security and Exchange Commissions, since Kotick would downplay these events and try and hide this information, and whenever this information would leak, it would negatively impact the company and therefore people who held shares in Blizzard. Kotick has been alleged of trying to basically squash any bad publicity, and key leaders at Activision Blizzard even spoke out against him and his behavior. Jennifer O'Neill was a co-head at Blizzard and is on equal footing with the male lead, but she was paid a lower salary than a male employee for the same job. This isn't an hourly wage. They have the same position, and she made less of a salary than him. That's insane. All of the drinking in the workplace got so bad that the company actually needed to implement a dry workplace policy because alcohol was mentioned on numerous offenses to HR, and people were drunk in the office all the time. I don't know how employees could get blackout drunk while working at 10 a.m. in an office, but this was so bad that they actually did move in to stop this. Kotick has been called out on his inaction to stop poor workplace conduct, ignoring it and dragging his feet on pretty much all high-level firings. Employees staged walkouts and in meetings meant to reinsure employees to try and change the mood of the situation. Kotick would show up late to these meetings meant to build confidence in the team, and then he would leave early from these meetings. So we're getting close up to current day, and Microsoft has gotten into contact with Blizzard Activision, and this all culminated in one of the largest video game acquisitions of all time. By 2023, Microsoft will purchase Blizz for $68.7 billion with a capital B. Microsoft came in pretty much with all hands on deck, alluding to a leadership shakeup to foster a better, safer work culture. And right now, people remain pretty wary on whether or not any of this will be followed through. Bobby and co remain the subject of discussion though. Too many people want him removed from his position. Nothing is confirmed, but according to anonymous sources near the deal, he'll be leaving, as his contract includes a clause that if he loses his position due to a company takeover, he'll get a severance package of $293 million. In the meantime though, his decisions will be pretty much looked over by the leadership at Microsoft, and referring to him being kept in check by the board over there and him reporting to them. So he can't really make any large decisions, he's just kind of sitting there waiting to get the bag. Right now, no one knows what Microsoft is going to do, but the company and its leadership have been very vocal about making a healthier work environment. And there's been also the discussion of monopolies and duopolies, but that's a topic for another time. This is where Blizzard pretty much stands now, looking to be acquired by Microsoft. They've fallen from grace as one of the greats. They were a cultural touchstone, not only to gaming culture, but tech culture, and they turned into an ugly stain that follows both of those industries around. People are leaving Blizzard games en masse, making things that people don't want, these weird mobile games, and pretty much alienating everybody who enjoyed their products, producing things that offend and annoy everyone else by just how corporate they are. I remember a time that organizations that worked with Blizzard worked with my crew, my people, and it's incredibly sad to see how all of that was a toxic lie told to young developers to trick them into a shitty work environment. Blizzard showed and has become an example of how rough and toxic the industry has pretty much always been, but no one really knew. And that's where Blizzard is today. What comes next? Well, hopefully nothing bad. I've left out so much. I have left out so much information about Blizzard in this video. It is insane. The sheer volume of sexual harassment cases and discrimination and employee inequity and overwork and crunch and corporate garbage, and I didn't even include the part about the whole mobile games. Blizzard, it's bad. I shortened it in this one. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell and do all those things. Hopefully this comes out good. I never know anymore, because sometimes the videos do amazing and other times nobody wants to watch my videos. So hopefully you watch this one. Give this one to your friends. I think they might like it.